NBA playoffs roughly about 3 weeks away, the MVP race is looking crazier and crazier by the day, and the latest NBA.com MVP ladder just confirms that. Hello everyone and welcome back to Step Back with Zach, and in today's video I want to talk about who is actually gonna win the NBA MVP award this season. Before I get into naming some of the players though, I just want to talk about some of the factors that have ultimately gone into what has been an otherwise crazy and just all over the place kind of MVP race this season. First of all, the main thing is the 65 game rule. For those of you that don't know what the 65 game rule is, essentially, in order for a player to qualify for postseason awards, like the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, All NBA teams, etc., they need to play a minimum of 65 games in the regular season, meaning they can only miss 17 games total. And with this said, some of the NBA's best are already so close to not meeting that requirement or have missed it completely. Nikola Jokic can only miss one more game until he's disqualified. Wemby can only miss 2 more games, and Luka and SGA both can only miss 4. Then we've seen players like Stephen Curry and LeBron James and Giannis who are just completely out of the race. J-Dub's another one. Those 4 cannot make any NBA postseason award, which is crazy. And this whole 65 game situation really came even more into light in how silly it is because of the Cade Cunningham recent injury, where he is having an All-NBA first team caliber season. However, he's only at 61 games played, and he's likely going to miss the rest of the regular season because of that collapsed lung, which is just completely not his fault. Anyway, 65 game rule, I hate it. I've talked about it a lot. I think it's stupid because, like, what if Victor Wembanyama only plays 64 games? Are you going to tell me that he's not the Defensive Player of the Year just because he missed one too many games? It's stupid. I don't like it. The other thing we can talk about is what you actually value when it comes to MVP. Do you value more of a two-way ability? Do you prefer one-way dominance? Do you prefer who's best at what? And are you actually looking at it from who is the most valuable player in the NBA, or are you looking at it as who is the best overall player in the NBA? This is something that a lot of the voters and just content creators and analysts alike talk about. There's so many different ways to look at it. However, I'm going to give a case for each of the 4 main contenders right now. Starting off with Victor Wembanyama, who is number 1 in the MVP polls. If you want to look at two-way ability and just overall defensive dominance and who is actually statistically the most valuable and impactful player on their team, it is Victor Wembanyama. He is the best two-way player in the NBA, and that is not even close. He's averaging 24 points, 11 boards, and 3 assists to go along with 1 steal and 3 blocks a night on 62% true shooting. He's leading the NBA in stocks per game and total as well. And like I said, if we want to talk about valuable in the most valuable player award and overall impact, Victor Wembanyama is the most deserving for this award. He's second in defensive rating, being only behind Chet Holmgren, who has a 102.9, and Victor Wembanyama has a 103. So he's very, very close. But Chet is surrounded by so many more incredible defenders than the Spurs are, making the Thunder the best defense in the NBA, while the Spurs are at 3rd. Wemby is also leading the NBA in net rating by a wide margin at 17.3, which is one of the highest of all time and almost 3 whole points ahead of second place SGA, who is second in net rating. He also has an on-off rating of 17.1, which is again by far the highest in the NBA. And the only person that even somewhat comes close is Jokic, who's at 13.6 or something. So Victor Wembanyama, those stats alone prove that he is the most impactful player in the NBA. When he is on the court for the Spurs are a better overall offense than the Denver Nuggets and a better overall defense than the OKC Thunder. So that means with Wemby, you are getting better offense than the Nuggets and better defense than the Thunder. Like, what? That's the greatest team of all time. And he's the best defensive player in the NBA by far. That's not even a discussion. He's holding opponents to 9.1% below their average field goal percentage from any point on the court, while also holding opponents to 10.4% below their average field goal percentage at the rim, which is crazy. He is creating 7.5 open shots per 100 possessions for his teammates, which is in the 89th percentile, and he just overall has led the Spurs to 22 wins in the team's last 24 games. That win-loss record is crazy, and one of those losses, he wasn't even playing, and the Spurs were versing a healthy Nuggets team. And since the turn of the calendar year, the San Antonio Spurs have been the best team in the entire NBA. Yeah, even above the OKC Thunder. And he's doing all of this in less than 30 minutes per game. So if he wins the MVP award, it will be the first time in NBA history that the MVP winner plays less than 30 minutes. So again, can you imagine if he was playing the same amount of minutes as any of these other guys that we're going to talk about today? His stats would be insane. Now, a big reason, though, that I do think that Victor Wembanyama has jumped to number 1 in the MVP polls is because the fact that he campaigned for himself post-game against... Who was it against? Was it the game after the Heat? Or was it the game after the Grizzlies? I don't know. But just like Draymond did last year where he started campaigning for himself, his Defensive Player of the Year award likelihood or probability jumped a lot. And I think this has been somewhat similar with Victor Wembanyama. You know what I mean? But then next, we have SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who has been the MVP favorite for the majority of the season, especially since the turn of the calendar year. If we want to talk about offensive dominance and overall efficiency in terms of your criteria for a player to win, it's SGA. He is the leader of the best team in the NBA and is the best player in the world. Another thing people look for when talking about the MVP award, who's the best player? It's Shai. Shai is averaging 31.5 points per game with almost 7 assists on a wild 55.7% field goal shooting, 39.3% from beyond the arc, and 88% from the free throw line for a crazy 67% true shooting percentage, which is insane for a guard. If he stays on this pace, he will pass unanimous Stephen Curry for the most efficient 30-plus point game season in terms of true shooting percentage. He is also currently 5th in terms of effective field goal percentage of all time among 30-point per game scorers. Did that make sense? I don't know. I hope so. Shai is shooting 76% at the rim, which is actually lower than I thought. When I saw that number, I was kind of disappointed. I thought it would be like 79-80%, which says a lot about who Shai is. He, as well, literally passed Wilt Chamberlain for most consecutive 20-plus point games in NBA history. Being up there with Wilt for any record ever, especially scoring, is an insane feat. Again, showing his consistency. Shai is also creating almost 15 open shots per 100 possessions for his teammates from his gravity and improved playmaking, which has him in the 99th percentile in the entire NBA, while also being 99th percentile in offensive load. This number is crazy, and I really want you guys to deep this. He is shooting 60.5% from 2 on around 15 attempts per game, which is insane volume, something we have never ever seen before. And if he finishes shooting 60.5% from 2, this would make him 11th all time in terms of 2-point field goal shooting percentage, and is the highest 2-point field goal shooting percentage by a guard ever. The Thunder really rely on his overall offense as well. They are 10 points per 100 possessions worse on offense when he is off the court. Crazy. SGA will also most likely win Clutch Player of the Year. It is between him and Anthony Edwards, but even Anthony Edwards is probably gonna not meet the 65 games required rule, which again, I hate that rule, but that's not what we're talking about today. SGA does lead the NBA in terms of clutch scoring per game, which just helps bolster his chances of winning the Clutch Player of the Year award. He is overall just having the best season of his entire career, in my opinion. Although he's not averaging the 33 points that he was averaging last season, this season he's been way more efficient, and he's done more with less. Because keep in mind, the Thunder have been so injury-riddled. They are second in the NBA in terms of most man-missed games this year. And yeah, Thomas Sorber and Nikola Topic and J-Dub take up a lot of that. However, all that inconsistency around him, Shai has still been an absolute beast. And last thing for Shai, remember, he is actually a pretty solid defensive player as well. the second best two-way player in terms of these top 4 dudes that we're going to be talking about. He is one of the better shot blocking guards in the NBA. He's really good at jumping the passing lanes. However, he can sometimes get a bit overrated on that side of the ball, specifically because of the fact that he is surrounded by such insane defensive talent. Next, I want to talk about Nikola Jokic. Now, if you want the person who's going to win the MVP being someone whose all-around offensive impact is the best and who has the best box score numbers, Nikola Jokic will win the MVP award. He is one of the best offensive engines ever. He is averaging 28 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists on 57% from the field, 38% from 3, and 83% from the free throw line on a wild 67.2% true shooting percentage. I need to start saying something other than wild. I say wild way too much. Anyway, he hasn't been as dominant since coming back from his injury, but even saying this, he's still putting up crazy numbers. Over his last 3 games, he has put up some absolutely nuts stats. Game 1, he had 22, 14, and 14. Game 3, he had 23, 17, and 17. And then his most recent game, 23, 21, and 19, which were all wins. He leads the NBA in triple-doubles and is second in double-doubles, which is not surprising to anybody because that's just kind of what Nikola Jokic does nowadays. He's got the highest offensive load in the entire NBA as well. He's first in created open shots for his teammates, which is not surprising. Again, both of those being per 100 possessions, and is in the 99th percentile in terms of passing quality, which again, no surprise. Jokic is one of the best playmakers we have ever seen. And out of the 4 guys we're going to talk about, he's the best playmaker. He's probably the best playmaker in the NBA in general nowadays. Definitely the best passing big man of all time as well. Like, the things that Jokic is able to do on offense are insane. His basketball IQ is one of the highest that we have in the NBA, alongside like Luka and LeBron, James Harden, Tyrese Halliburton, those computers that a lot of people like to reference and talk about in terms of NBA players. Nikola Jokic is crazy. And I do think, like I said in my top 10 centers video, I do think that he is being a little bit disrespected at the moment because of the fact that the Nuggets just aren't winning a lot and he hasn't been as impactful as, he has been in the past. And yes, his advanced stats are not as great as they have been, but Nikola Jokic is still one of the 2 best offensive players in the NBA, him alongside SGA. I do really like Jokic, man. I mean, he hasn't been as good, but he's still really damn good. And he's also an underrated defender. He's not great, he's not terrible, he's just kind of alright. And then the last dude that we need to talk about for an MVP case is Luka Doncic. If you are someone that values scoring at an absolutely insane and dominant level, Luka Doncic is your guy. Luka is averaging 33.6 points per game on a pretty damn good 61.3% true shooting, while also grabbing 8 boards and dishing out 8 dimes per night. He is the only player as well in the NBA this season to have over 2,000 points, being 126 points ahead of second place SGA. He's tied for first in field goal makes at 11, along with Shea, and is second in 3-pointers made per game at 4 per contest on 37% shooting from beyond the arc. He's also second in total made threes this year, only behind Conker Nipple, where he has made 242 threes this whole year. When Luka wants to, he can go absolutely bonkers when it comes to putting the ball in the hoop. Over the last 10 games, he is averaging 40 points per game while leading the Lakers to a 9-1 record, only losing to the really damn good defense of the Detroit Pistons. And during this stretch, he's had a 51-point game and a 60-point game against the Miami Heat, where he scored that 60 in less than 38 minutes. And since February 1st, he is shooting 39% from 3 on 12 attempts per game. A big thing that analysts and content creators alike were talking about Luka and were knocking him for was the fact that he was shooting a lot of threes and only making them at like a 33% rate. But his 3-point shooting has improved dramatically. In March alone, Luka is averaging 37 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists, while leading his team to a 12-2 record during the month, while scoring 121 more points in total than second place Paolo Banchero. He's probably going to win Player of the Month for March for the Western Conference. Luka Doncic, it'll be him or Wemby, or Shea, either of those 3. Luka's also the best foul drawer in the NBA. You can call him a free throw merchant, a foul baiter, whatever. He gets to the line. That's what great scorers do. He is the only player shooting over 10 free throws per game this year, while making the second most, only behind Shea. And in my opinion, this is the best season we have seen from Luka Doncic outside of his 2023-2024 season. You know, that season where he had the 73-point game against the Hawks and led his team to the NBA Finals? Yeah, that was a pretty damn great season. With his surrounding teammates also just not being the best, Luka Doncic has carried the Lakers to doing what many people didn't think was possible. They are firmly in the 3 seed. What I find absolutely ridiculous is the fact that Luka Doncic was literally top 3 in the MVP race last week. And this week, he's just dropped out outside of the top 3 because of that one loss against the Pistons. Now, yeah, Jokic has put up some insane stats, but again, this hasn't been against very hard opponents. Luka Doncic is leading his team to more wins than Jokic is at the moment. So Luka Doncic being a little bit disrespected, but also it is March basketball. So if you know anything about March in the NBA, we don't really take it too seriously. Like, we kind of take it with a grain of salt because a lot of players are checked out. Teams are just either resting themselves for the playoffs or have just given up entirely, where they're just letting other players rock out who don't really get many minutes throughout the season. But not to take away anything from Luka, putting up those scoring numbers is crazy. Luka Doncic will go down as one of the best scorers of the basketball that we have ever seen. Now, I guess some overall opinions I have here, I mean, clearly the top 2 MVP frontrunners are Wemby and Shea. Like, that's not a debate, right? But what it ultimately comes down to, again, is Wemby's defense versus Shea's offense. Shea is the much better offensive player. Wemby is the much better defensive player. But in my opinion, what I think Wemby gives you on offense and defense is more than what Shea gives you on offense and defense, if that kind of makes sense. Wemby, I don't know, like, I'm flip-flopping between Wemby and SGA all the time. Like, I literally do not know. Wemby's impact and value on his team is better than Shea, which is crazy to say, but Shea is technically the better player at the moment just because his scoring is insane. Like, his offense is nuts, but then so is Wemby's defense. So I really think this is a 1A, 1B type of situation. Then you have like Luka and Jokic behind them. It is a 2-man race at the moment, in my opinion, because of the fact that Jokic, like I said, has not been as great since returning from his injury, and this big Luka jump into the MVP conversation has been through March. So, yeah, and again, Luka is the worst defender out of these 4, and Jokic, again, is also not a great defender. But not to say those 2 are bad, because they're very average, but it is between Wemby and Shea. Now, my prediction, ultimately, I have Shea still winning the award. However, I do think that if the Spurs can capture the 1 seed by the end of the season, Wemby will become the MVP. So, if the standings stay like they are now, it will be Shea winning, runner-up being Wemby, and then it will be Luka Doncic and then Jokic at number 4. There's so many different factors that go into who's actually going to win the MVP award. It's a political game, right? The MVP criteria changes every goddamn season. It just kind of depends on who the NBA is favoring at the moment. I still think that they're on the side of Shea, and I don't think that they're wrong for that. But if they want to give it to Wemby as well, like, again, I don't think they're wrong for that. Wemby's impact has been crazy, but so is Shea's. Like, these are the 2 best players in the NBA at the moment, in my opinion, in terms of impact. But that will be all from me for this video about the MVP race coming down the stretch of the NBA season. Let me know who you guys have as the MVP this year. And man, I'm really excited to see what ultimately ends up happening. I think this is going to go down to the very last game of the regular season. But yeah, thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.